Welcome back, everybody, to another Sabaton reaction video. Well, the people have spoken over on Patreon, and they want to see The Last Stand. I have been loving this entire album. Even though I'm still reacting to songs on the channel, I have begun listening to some of their music, like in my car and things like that. And The Last Stand, I think, is my favorite album. And I think there's just something that we who love history find particularly, I don't know if romantic is the right word, but there's just something that we're drawn to in these last stand stories. You know, stories like the Alamo, stories like what happened with the 101st Airborne in Bastogne, and stories of the Swiss Guard during the sack of Rome in 1527, which is what this song's about. I think we just like these stories of people being outnumbered and knowing they're facing certain death, but fighting anyway. And so I'm excited to dive into this one. This is something I feel like I know a little bit more about compared to some of the topics, because I've always been fascinated by military history during the Middle Ages and into the late medieval time into this time here. Now we're dealing with kind of the Reformation, where Martin Luther has kind of come to prominence in what was then the Holy Roman Empire, what we today call Germany. This is 1527. This is the sack of Rome by soldiers under the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, though I don't think these were with his orders. I believe the man, I think it was a duke who was in charge, I want to say the Duke of Bourbon, was actually killed during the sack of Rome, leading his troops in attacking Rome. But The Last Stand is about the last stand by Swiss guards who were defending the Vatican against these soldiers who had sacked Rome and were making their way toward the Vatican. And this was supposed to be a no-no. You weren't supposed to send troops into the Vatican, especially as Christians. But these troops did it anyway. So let's go ahead and dive in, and I'll, if I notice things, if I catch things in the references, I'll try to point those out. As always, please don't forget to hit like, subscribe if you haven't already. Going to be doing some giveaways when we hit get up to 10,000 subscribers, which we're headed toward pretty close. So the Holy See is obviously, that's a reference to the Vatican. This has kind of always been seen, at least for the first 1,500 years, as the kind of main central focus of Christianity, because that's where the Bishop of Rome, also called the Pope, is. And they're getting ready to make reference to the 189. These are the Swiss guards who, even to this day, are tasked. They have those really kind of fancy uniforms, are tasked with defending the Pope. Swiss guards were not only in Rome, though. In fact, there were a number of royal households who employed Swiss guards as their personal bodyguard. I can't specifically think of which nations did this, but quite a few nations who had royal families used Swiss guards as their defenders at this time in history.
For the
Now I gotta say, just speaking of the music for a second, as a musician myself, this is probably one of my favorite songs. I really like the song itself. I think it flows really well. Some of their songs, and I'm not criticizing their songs, because I love every one of their songs. I love the topics. Some of their songs, you can tell it's harder to kind of make the words flow when they're telling the story. This one really kind of just flows really well. And maybe I'm drawn to it more as a Christian myself, just the idea of people standing not only for their Lord, but for, their earthly Lord, but for God. And there's something special to me that I really connect with in this song. All right, so I'm going to pause there. I've been trying to let it play out as much as I can. Under guard of 42, so if I understand right, they make their stand in a cemetery, which there's something kind of amazing about that in and of itself. And the 189, eventually there's only 42 of them that are left. And this 42 then hold off long enough for the Pope to get to Castle St. Angelo, which is kind of the fortified area within the Vatican. And that's where he ends up holding up. And they're able to hold on long enough for him to get to safety there, so that the men who are sacking Rome and are attacking the Vatican are unable to get to the Pope while he's there. They're the gods of the Holy See. They're the gods of Christianity. The God through history is paved with salvation. They're the 189 in the service of heaven. They're protecting the holy line. It was 1527. Give their rights on the steps to heaven. Thy will be done. For the grace, for the might of the Lord, for the home of the holy, for the faith, for the way of the sword, give the rights of holy. For the grace, for the might of the Lord, in the name of his glory. For the faith, for the way of the sword, come and tell the story again. All right. That part there is really cool, because that's hard to do. I think of things like Hamilton, the musical, where they do a lot of those words that end with the same, like capitulation, annihilation, salvation, all those words. It's hard to sing that repeatedly, especially over the course of an entire concert where you're doing a lot of different songs. So I'm just impressed by their ability to sing that part and do it well. But again, not only one of my favorite songs, but one of my favorite stories that they've done a song about. And this whole Last Stand thing just really resonates with me, especially, like I said, as a Christian. So let's see how this one ends up. That was good. That was one of my favorite ones so far. So a couple of closing thoughts about all this. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, this is during the time of the Reformation, and there's a bloody war that takes place in Germany during this time between Protestant and Catholic forces. The same thing happens in France. You have the same thing happen with the Pilgrimage of Grace in England, which is an uprising by Catholics against what they see as Protestantism, which really wasn't, because Henry VIII wasn't really a Protestant. He was just a Catholic that didn't want to be under the thumb of the Pope anymore. But same thing happens there, and then Bloody Mary eventually comes to the power there as a Catholic and puts down a lot of the Protestants. And so this is going back and forth, and this is a time when there's a lot of infighting between what was formerly a more unified Christian church in Europe. And this is really the beginning of multiple schisms that take place over the coming couple of centuries after that. But let me know your thoughts about all that. Please hit that like button if you would. I'm going to put up a new vote over on Patreon, not for the next Sabaton song, though I will continue to do Sabaton songs, don't worry. I think I'm going to do the Lost Battalion next, because I really like that song. But I'm going to put up a vote about the next reaction video, non-Sabaton reaction video that you'd like to see me do, and I'll put up some options for that, so that'll be available for all the patrons over on Patreon. Thank you to all of you who are supporting me in that way, or just by liking and commenting videos, you're supporting this channel. I appreciate that. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.